In the early months of 1942, Norway stood as a silent witness to the unfolding drama of World War II, its majestic fjords and dense forests concealing a simmering resistance against the iron grip of the German Wehrmacht. Since the swift and brutal invasion in April 1940, Norway had been under occupation, its strategic significance to the Nazi war effort becoming increasingly apparent. The port of Narvik, a crucial hub for iron ore shipments, served as a lifeline for the German armaments industry, feeding the machinery of war that was ravaging Europe. Yet, amid the towering pines and rugged terrain, a quiet defiance was brewing among the Norwegian populace, one that the occupiers would soon come to underestimate. The Germans, buoyed by their early successes and confident in their military might, perceived the Norwegian people as compliant and passive. This miscalculation was rooted in a broader Nazi ideology that dismissed the capacity for resistance among those they deemed racially inferior. The initial lack of overt resistance activity reinforced their belief that control over Norway's resources was secure. However, beneath this veneer of compliance lay a deep-seated yearning for freedom and sovereignty, a sentiment that would soon manifest in organized acts of defiance. By the time the occupation progressed, small clandestine groups began to form, driven by a shared desire to reclaim their homeland. Among these groups was Milorg, the principal Norwegian resistance organization, which sought to unite various factions under a common cause. Additionally, operatives from the British Special Operations Executive (SOE) infiltrated Norway, tasked with coordinating and supporting resistance efforts across occupied Europe. Despite facing overwhelming odds, these groups were fueled by a commitment to disrupt the German war machine and aid the Allied cause. The early resistance efforts were fraught with challenges. The Germans, confident in their intelligence networks, dismissed the notion that small, disorganized groups could pose a significant threat to their operations. Meanwhile, the resistance fighters grappled with the enormity of their task. They faced a well-equipped and highly organized military force, and the risks of discovery were ever present. Yet, the Norwegians possessed an invaluable asset that the Germans had overlooked: ingenuity. This ingenuity would soon give rise to a bold plan that would exploit the very environment the Germans sought to control. The dense forests of Norway, with their natural cover and challenging terrain, became the backdrop for a strategy that would allow the resistance to operate under the radar. It was here, among the towering pines, that the concept of the lumberjack strategy was born, a plan that would see resistance fighters masquerade as forestry workers, using their cover to launch sabotage operations against the German ore lines. The German underestimation of the Norwegian resistance would prove to be a costly oversight. When the resistance began to organize and strategize, they prepared for a series of operations that would challenge the occupiers' control over Norway's vital resources. The lumberjack strategy, still in its infancy, promised to turn the forests into a theater of resistance, where the lines between civilian and combatant would blur, and where the determination of a few could alter the course of many. To fully understand the context of the Norwegian resistance and the emergence of the lumberjack strategy, one must consider the geographical, social, and historical landscape of Norway during the early 1940s. Norway, with its rugged terrain and vast forests, is a land of striking contrasts. Its fjords, mountains, and dense woodlands provided both a natural barrier and a strategic advantage for those who knew how to navigate them. The country's geography played a critical role in shaping the resistance's tactics, allowing them to blend into the environment while executing their missions. The Norwegian population, numbering around 3 million at the time, was diverse, with a mix of urban and rural communities. The cities, such as Oslo and Bergen, were centers of commerce and culture, while the rural areas were characterized by small farming communities and traditional livelihoods. The occupation disrupted daily life, with German soldiers stationed throughout the country, enforcing curfews and imposing strict regulations. The presence of the Wehrmacht was a constant reminder of the loss of sovereignty, and the Norwegian people were acutely aware of the sacrifices made during the invasion. By the time the occupation progressed, the German authorities implemented a series of measures aimed at consolidating their control. They requisitioned resources, commandeered transportation networks, and imposed heavy taxes on the population. The iron ore from northern Norway, particularly from the mines in Kiruna, Sweden, was of paramount importance to the German war effort. The ore was transported via rail to Narvik, where it was shipped to Germany, fueling the production of weapons and military vehicles. Disrupting this supply chain became a strategic objective for the resistance. The formation of Milorg in 1941 marked a significant turning point in the resistance movement. Initially composed of former military personnel and civilians, Milorg sought to establish a coordinated effort to resist the occupiers. They organized training sessions, disseminated information, and built a network of safe houses to support their operations. The group operated in secrecy, aware that any misstep could lead to severe repercussions from the Germans. The British SOE recognized the potential of the Norwegian resistance and began providing support in the form of training, equipment, and intelligence. This collaboration was crucial, as the resistance lacked the resources and expertise to mount significant operations against the Germans. The SOE's involvement also underscored the importance of international solidarity in the fight against fascism. The Allies understood that the resistance in Norway could serve as a model for other occupied nations, demonstrating the effectiveness of grassroots movements in undermining enemy control. As 1942 unfolded, the resistance faced a critical juncture. The initial skepticism from both the occupiers and some members of the resistance itself began to wane as small acts of sabotage started to take shape. The realization that the Germans could be challenged, even in minor ways, instilled a sense of hope and determination among the Norwegian people. The Lumberjack strategy emerged as a response to the need for a more audacious approach to sabotage, one that would allow the resistance to operate under the guise of normalcy. The forests of Norway, with their dense foliage and rugged terrain, provided the perfect cover for resistance operations. The lumberjack operatives underwent training in logging techniques, learning to wield axes and saws with the same precision they would later apply to their sabotage efforts. This training was not merely practical, it was symbolic of their resolve to reclaim their homeland. By adopting the guise of forestry workers, they could move through the woods with relative ease, avoiding detection while carrying out their missions. The logistics of the lumberjack strategy required meticulous planning. Resistance fighters needed to coordinate their activities, ensuring that their operations did not draw attention from German patrols. They transported tools and equipment disguised as logging gear, allowing them to carry out acts of sabotage without arousing suspicion. The presence of legitimate forestry operations in the area provided a convenient alibi, enabling the resistance to blend seamlessly into the daily life of the forest. During the resistance prepared to implement their plan, they were acutely aware of the stakes involved. The German war machine was relentless, and any disruption to its operations could have far-reaching consequences. Yet, the resistance was undeterred. They were driven by a sense of duty to their country and a belief in the power of collective action. The lumberjack strategy represented a new phase in their struggle, one that would test their resolve and ingenuity to the fullest. The groundwork laid in these early months of 1942 would soon give way to a series of operations that would challenge the German occupiers in ways they had not anticipated. The lumberjack strategy, born from necessity and ingenuity, promised to turn the forests of Norway into a theater of resistance, where the lines between civilian and combatant would blur, and where the determination of a few could alter the course of many. With the groundwork laid, the resistance launched their first sabotage missions in the spring of 1943. Operating under the guise of logging operations, the lumberjack operatives began to target the rail lines that were vital to the German ore supply. Equipped with tools that had been cleverly disguised as forestry equipment, they set about their task with precision and determination. The initial acts of sabotage were modest in scope, designed to test the waters and gauge the German response. Resistance members loosened rail joints, causing minor derailments that disrupted the flow of ore without causing significant damage. They also targeted telegraph lines, cutting communications and adding to the confusion faced by the German forces. These early operations were executed with a level of stealth that allowed the resistance to remain undetected, even as the frequency of incidents began to increase. The German command, initially dismissive of the disruptions, soon found themselves grappling with a growing problem. The seemingly isolated incidents began to take a toll on the efficiency of the ore convoys, forcing the Wehrmacht to divert resources to address the issue. Security measures were heightened along the rail lines, with additional guards and checkpoints established in an attempt to deter further sabotage. Despite these efforts, the resistance remained undeterred. The success of their initial operations emboldened them, and they began to escalate their efforts. The Lumberjack operatives, now more experienced and confident in their abilities, launched more ambitious missions, targeting key sections of the rail lines and causing more significant disruptions to the ore supply. The impact of these operations was felt not only by the German forces but also by the Norwegian populace, who began to take notice of the resistance's efforts. The Lumberjack operatives became symbols of defiance, their actions inspiring others to join the struggle against the occupiers. The resistance had demonstrated that even in the face of overwhelming odds, a small group of determined individuals could make a difference. As the confrontation between the resistance and the German forces intensified, the resistance prepared for a prolonged struggle that would test the limits of both sides. The Lumberjack strategy, once a bold and untested idea, had proven its worth, and the resistance was prepared to continue their fight for as long as it took to achieve their ultimate goal, the liberation of Norway. The first significant operation occurred in late June 1943, when a group of resistance fighters, disguised as lumberjacks, targeted a critical bridge on the rail line near the village of Bjørkvik. This bridge, a vital link in the supply chain, was heavily trafficked by German convoys transporting ore from Narvik. Under the cover of darkness, the operatives set to work, using explosives concealed within their logging gear. The explosion that followed was a thunderous roar, sending shockwaves through the surrounding forest and causing the bridge to collapse into the river below. The immediate aftermath of the operation was chaotic. German soldiers, caught off guard, scrambled to assess the damage and secure the area. The resistance fighters, having executed their mission with precision, slipped away into the dense woods, leaving behind only the echoes of their defiance. The destruction of the bridge sent ripples through the German command, who were forced to reroute convoys and increase security measures along the remaining rail lines. In the weeks that followed, the resistance continued to build on their initial successes. They launched a series of coordinated attacks on various rail lines, targeting both the infrastructure and the supply convoys themselves. These operations were meticulously planned, utilizing local knowledge of the terrain to evade detection and maximize impact. The lumberjack operatives became adept at using the cover of the forest to their advantage, striking swiftly and retreating before the Germans could mount a response. The German command, increasingly frustrated by the disruptions, began to implement stricter security protocols. Patrols were intensified, and the presence of military personnel in the area increased significantly. The once peaceful forests of Norway, which had served as a sanctuary for the resistance, now became a battleground where the stakes were higher than ever. The lumberjack operatives faced greater risks, but their resolve only strengthened in the face of adversity. As the summer of 1943 progressed, the resistance's actions began to draw attention beyond Norway's borders. Reports of their daring sabotage missions reached the Allied forces, who recognized the strategic importance of the Norwegian resistance in disrupting German supply lines. This newfound attention brought a sense of legitimacy to the resistance's efforts, as they were no longer seen as mere nuisances but as crucial players in the larger conflict against the Axis powers. In August 1943, a pivotal meeting took place between Norwegian resistance leaders and representatives from the British Special Operations Executive, SOE. The meeting, held in a remote location deep within the forests, aimed to coordinate efforts and enhance the effectiveness of the sabotage operations. The SOE provided valuable intelligence and resources, including training in more advanced sabotage techniques and access to weaponry that would further empower the resistance fighters. Collaboration between the resistance and the SOE marked a turning point in the struggle against the German occupiers. With the support of the Allies, the Lumberjack operatives were able to expand their operations, launching larger and more complex missions that targeted not only rail lines but also supply depots and military installations. The resistance fighters became increasingly bold, emboldened by the knowledge that they were part of a larger movement dedicated to the defeat of fascism. As autumn approached, the resistance's impact on the German war effort became increasingly evident. The disruptions to the ore supply chain began to affect the production of war materials, causing shortages that rippled through the German military. The Wehrmacht, already stretched thin due to the demands of the Eastern Front, found itself grappling with a growing insurgency in Norway that threatened to undermine their control over the region. The confrontation between the resistance and the German forces reached a critical juncture as the winter of 1943 set in. The harsh conditions of the Norwegian winter posed significant challenges for both sides. The resistance fighters, accustomed to operating in the forests, adapted their tactics to the changing environment, utilizing the snow to their advantage. They became adept at moving silently through the winter landscape, striking at the heart of the German supply lines while remaining hidden from view. The German response to the escalating sabotage operations was one of increasing brutality. In an effort to quell the resistance, the Wehrmacht intensified their reprisals against suspected collaborators and resistance members. Villages were subjected to collective punishment, with families of known resistance fighters facing arrest, deportation, or worse. The heavy-handed tactics employed by the Germans only served to galvanize the Norwegian populace, who rallied around the resistance with renewed determination. As the confrontation continued, the Lumberjack operatives remained resolute in their mission. They understood the risks involved, but the knowledge that their actions were making a tangible difference in the fight against oppression fueled their resolve. The resistance had proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, a small group of determined individuals could challenge the might of the German war machine. The winter of 1943 became a crucible for the resistance, testing their limits and solidifying their commitment to the cause. The Lumberjack operatives, now seasoned veterans of sabotage, continued to operate with a quiet determination, driven by the belief that their actions were contributing to the broader struggle for freedom. The confrontation between the occupiers and the resistance had transformed into a battle of wills, where the spirit of defiance burned brightly against the backdrop of tyranny. By the end of that year, the resistance had demonstrated their ability to disrupt the German war effort significantly. The Lumberjack strategy had evolved from a bold idea into a formidable campaign, one that would continue to challenge the occupiers in the months and years to come. The resistance prepared for a prolonged struggle, as the confrontation between the Norwegian resistance and the German forces reached a critical juncture, with the fate of Norway hanging in the balance. As the chill of late 1943 settled over the rugged Norwegian landscape, the clandestine efforts of the resistance began to bear fruit. The Lumberjack operatives, under the guise of forestry work, had escalated their sabotage operations, targeting the iron ore rail lines with increasing precision and boldness. The once seemingly invincible German supply chain, which snaked its way from the mines of Kiruna and Malmberget in Sweden to the port of Narvik, was now a vulnerable artery under constant threat. The resistance's tactics evolved with each passing month. Initially, their efforts resulted in minor derailments and disruptions, but as their expertise grew, so did the scale of their operations. By late 1943, entire sections of rail lines were rendered unusable, causing significant delays in ore shipments. These disruptions forced the German command to acknowledge a growing problem that could no longer be dismissed as mere accidents or isolated incidents. The impact of these sabotage operations rippled beyond the immediate logistical challenges. The Wehrmacht, already stretched thin across multiple fronts, was compelled to divert resources to safeguard the ore lines. Guards were stationed at critical junctures, and checkpoints were established along the routes, creating a tense atmosphere in the once tranquil forests of northern Norway. The Germans' increased presence, however, did little to deter the determined resistance fighters, who adapted their strategies to evade detection. The success of the lumberjack operatives did not go unnoticed. News of their daring exploits began to spread, reaching the ears of both the Norwegian populace and the Allied forces. Within Norway, the resistance's achievements became a beacon of hope, inspiring others to join the cause. The realization that ordinary citizens could inflict damage on the German war machine instilled a renewed sense of purpose and unity among the Norwegian people. Internationally, the Allies recognized the strategic value of the Norwegian resistance. Reports of the disruptions to the German ore supply chain reached the desks of military planners in London and Washington, who understood the broader implications of these actions. The ability to hinder the enemy's access to vital resources was a critical component of the overall Allied strategy, and the Norwegian resistance's efforts were seen as a crucial contribution to the war effort. The revelation of the resistance's impact also had a profound effect on the German occupiers. The realization that their control over Norway was not as absolute as they had believed prompted a reassessment of their occupation strategy. The Wehrmacht's attempts to fortify the rail lines were met with mixed results, as the resistance continued to adapt and innovate. The Germans' frustration grew, leading to increased tension and paranoia among the occupying forces. Amidst this backdrop of escalating conflict, the Norwegian resistance remained steadfast. The lumberjack operatives, now seasoned in their craft, continued to operate with a quiet determination, driven by the knowledge that their actions were making a tangible difference. Their story was one of ingenuity and courage, a testament to the power of collective action in the face of overwhelming odds. As 1943 drew to a close, the effect of the sabotage operations was undeniable. The resistance had succeeded in disrupting the German war effort, proving that even the most formidable adversaries could be challenged by those willing to stand and fight. The resistance prepared for the next chapter in this unfolding drama, as the conflict between the occupiers and the resistance reached a critical juncture. The winter months brought with them new challenges, but also new opportunities for the resistance. The harsh conditions of the Norwegian winter forced the Germans to rely heavily on their supply lines, making them increasingly vulnerable to sabotage. The lumberjack operatives, now well versed in the art of stealth and subterfuge, seized upon this opportunity to escalate their operations further. In early January 1944, a coordinated attack was launched on multiple rail lines across northern Norway. Resistance fighters, working in small teams, targeted key points along the tracks, using explosives to cripple the infrastructure. The operation was meticulously planned, with each team assigned specific objectives and escape routes. The result was a series of devastating explosions that sent shockwaves through the German command, leaving them scrambling to respond. The success of this operation reverberated throughout Norway, further galvanizing the resistance and inspiring more citizens to join the fight. The lumberjack operatives became folk heroes, their bravery celebrated in clandestine gatherings and whispered conversations. The realization that they were part of a larger movement fueled their determination, and the resistance began to see an influx of new recruits eager to contribute to the cause. As the German forces struggled to contain the growing insurgency, the resistance capitalized on their successes. They launched propaganda campaigns to raise awareness of their efforts, disseminating leaflets and pamphlets that highlighted the impact of their sabotage operations. The message was clear. The fight for Norway's freedom was not just a military struggle but a collective effort that required the support of all Norwegians. The revelation of the resistance's impact on the German war effort also caught the attention of the Allies, who began to provide more substantial support. The SOE increased its involvement, offering training and resources to enhance the resistance's capabilities. This collaboration marked a turning point in the struggle, as the lumberjack operatives gained access to more sophisticated equipment and intelligence that would further empower their operations. As the winter of 1943–1944 progressed, the resistance's actions continued to disrupt the German supply chain, causing significant delays in the transportation of ore. The Wehrmacht, now fully aware of the threat posed by the resistance, implemented increasingly draconian measures to quell dissent. The heavy-handed tactics employed by the Germans only served to deepen the resolve of the Norwegian people, who rallied around the resistance with renewed determination. The effect of the sabotage operations was felt not only in Norway but also in the broader context of the war. The disruptions to the German ore supply chain had a cascading effect, hindering the production of war materials and straining the already overextended German military. The Allies, recognizing the strategic value of the Norwegian resistance, increased their support, providing weapons, training, and logistical assistance to bolster the resistance's capabilities. As the year progressed, the resistance's successes continued to mount. The German occupiers, increasingly demoralized and overstretched, struggled to contain the growing insurgency. The tide had turned, and the momentum was now firmly on the side of the resistance. The transformation of the resistance was a testament to the power of collective action and the indomitable spirit of the Norwegian people. The lumberjack operatives, once underestimated and dismissed by the occupiers, had proven that even the most formidable adversaries could be challenged by those willing to stand and fight. Their story was one of courage and determination, a beacon of hope in a world engulfed by war. As 1943 drew to a close, the resistance prepared for the final act in the struggle for Norway's freedom. The resistance had shown that they were capable of achieving the impossible, and the occupation was now within reach. The transformation of the resistance marked a pivotal moment in the fight against tyranny, a testament to the power of ordinary people to effect extraordinary change. As the winter of 1944 deepened, the Norwegian resistance found itself at a critical juncture. The German occupiers, increasingly aware of the threat posed by the lumberjack operatives, escalated their campaign of repression. The brutality of the Wehrmacht's reprisals was a stark reminder of the high stakes involved in the struggle for Norway's freedom. The resistance had become a thorn in the side of the German war machine, and the occupiers were determined to crush this burgeoning movement. The consequences of the resistance's sabotage operations were profound. The disruptions to the iron ore supply chain had begun to resonate throughout the German military-industrial complex. As shipments were delayed and production slowed, the Wehrmacht faced mounting pressure to respond. The iron ore from Norway was essential for the production of weapons and munitions, and any interruption in this supply could have dire implications for the German war effort. The resistance's actions were not merely acts of defiance, they were strategic strikes that targeted the very heart of the enemy's capabilities. In response to these challenges, the German command implemented a series of draconian measures aimed at quelling the resistance. The Wehrmacht intensified their patrols in the forests, establishing checkpoints and conducting searches of suspected areas of resistance activity. The once serene landscape of Norway was transformed into a battleground, with soldiers patrolling the woods and villages living in fear of reprisals. The German occupiers employed a strategy of collective punishment, targeting entire communities suspected of harboring resistance members. Families were torn apart, homes were destroyed, and the specter of violence loomed large over the Norwegian populace. The moral dilemmas faced by the resistance fighters were profound. They understood that their actions could lead to severe consequences for their families and communities. The decision to engage in sabotage was not taken lightly. It was a choice made in the face of overwhelming odds and the knowledge that the price of freedom could be steep. Many resistance members grappled with the fear of discovery, knowing that capture could lead to torture or execution. Yet, the resolve to fight against oppression outweighed these fears. The actions of the lumberjack operatives were driven by a deep sense of duty to their country and a belief in the righteousness of their cause. As the German reprisals intensified, the resistance found itself at a crossroads. The brutal tactics employed by the occupiers only served to galvanize public support for the resistance. Ordinary Norwegians, who had previously remained neutral or passive, began to see the resistance as a beacon of hope in a time of darkness. The sight of friends and neighbors being taken away in the dead of night stirred a sense of outrage and solidarity among the populace. The resistance's courage inspired many to join the fight, swelling their ranks and providing much-needed support. The growing public support for the resistance had a transformative effect on the movement. New recruits brought fresh energy and ideas, enhancing the operational capabilities of the lumberjack operatives. The resistance adapted their strategies to counter the German crackdown, employing guerrilla tactics that utilized their intimate knowledge of the local terrain. The forests, once a place of concealment, became a battlefield where the resistance held the advantage. The lumberjack operatives continued to strike at the ore lines with precision, their actions a constant thorn in the side of the German war effort. The escalation of violence also drew international attention. Reports of the German reprisals reached the Allied powers, who condemned the actions of the occupiers and pledged their support to the Norwegian resistance. The plight of the Norwegian people became a rallying cry, further solidifying the bonds between the resistance and their allies abroad. The Allies recognized the strategic value of the Norwegian resistance, understanding that their efforts were contributing to the broader goal of undermining the German war machine. As the conflict intensified, the resistance faced not only external challenges but also internal dilemmas. The question of how far they were willing to go in their fight for freedom weighed heavily on their minds. The moral implications of their actions were complex. While they sought to disrupt the German war effort, they were also aware of the collateral damage inflicted on innocent civilians. The resistance grappled with the knowledge that their actions could lead to suffering for those they sought to protect. Yet, they believed that Norway's fight for freedom justified the risks they were taking. The consequences of the resistance's actions were far-reaching. The German occupiers, increasingly demoralized and overstretched, struggled to contain the growing insurgency. The tide had turned, and the momentum was now firmly on the side of the resistance. The lumberjack operatives had proven that they could challenge the might of the Wehrmacht, and their actions inspired others across Europe to rise against their oppressors. As 1944 progressed, the conflict between the occupiers and the resistance reached a boiling point. The stakes had never been higher, and the outcome remained uncertain. Yet, in the face of adversity, the Norwegian people stood united, determined to see their country free once more. The resistance had shown that they were capable of achieving the impossible, and the occupation was now within reach. The year 1944 marked a transformative period for the Norwegian resistance as they adapted to the escalating conflict and the harsh realities of war. The culmination of their efforts, combined with the growing support from the Norwegian populace and the Allies, led to a significant shift in the dynamics of the struggle for freedom. The resistance, once a disparate group of individuals, had evolved into a cohesive and formidable force capable of challenging the German occupiers on multiple fronts. The aftermath of the intensified conflict was characterized by a renewed sense of purpose among the resistance fighters. The brutal reprisals from the German occupiers had galvanized public support, and the resistance found itself at the forefront of a national movement. Ordinary Norwegians, inspired by the courage of the lumberjack operatives, began to take up arms and join the fight. The resistance's ranks swelled, bringing fresh energy and resources to their operations. This transformation marked a pivotal moment in the struggle for Norway's freedom, as the resistance became a symbol of hope and resilience for the entire nation. Collaboration between the resistance and the Allies also played a crucial role in this transformation. As the Allies recognized the strategic value of the Norwegian resistance, they increased their support, providing weapons, training, and logistical assistance. This partnership not only enhanced the operational capabilities of the resistance but also solidified the bonds between the Norwegian fighters and their international allies. The knowledge that they were part of a larger struggle against tyranny provided a powerful motivation for the resistance fighters, reinforcing their commitment to the cause. The transformation of the resistance was not without its challenges. The increased visibility of their operations drew the attention of the German command, who responded with heightened security measures and retaliatory actions. The Wehrmacht's attempts to fortify their positions along the rail lines were met with mixed results, as the resistance continued to adapt and innovate. The forests of Norway, once a sanctuary for the lumberjack operatives, became a battleground where the stakes were higher than ever. Despite the dangers, the resistance remained resolute. The knowledge that their actions were making a tangible difference in the fight against the German war machine provided a sense of purpose and solidarity. The lumberjack operatives, now seasoned veterans, continued to operate with a quiet determination, driven by the belief that their struggle was not just for Norway, but for the liberation of all occupied nations. Their story was one of ingenuity and courage, a testament to the power of collective action in the face of overwhelming odds. As the year progressed, the resistance's successes continued to mount. The German occupiers, increasingly demoralized and overstretched, struggled to contain the growing insurgency. The tide had turned, and the momentum was now firmly on the side of the resistance. The disruptions to the German ore supply chain had a cascading effect, hindering the production of war materials and straining the already overextended German military. The resistance's actions were not merely acts of defiance, they were strategic strikes that targeted the very heart of the enemy's capabilities. The transformation of the resistance also had a profound impact on the Norwegian populace. The once passive citizens, who had lived under the shadow of occupation, began to see themselves as active participants in the struggle for their country's freedom. The resistance's actions inspired a sense of national pride and unity, fostering a collective identity that transcended individual differences. The Norwegian people rallied around the resistance, providing support in various forms, whether through intelligence, supplies, or shelter for the fighters. The aftermath of the transformation was a testament to the power of collective action and the indomitable spirit of the Norwegian people. The lumberjack operatives, once underestimated and dismissed by the occupiers, had proven that even the most formidable adversaries could be challenged by those willing to stand and fight. Their story was one of courage and determination, a beacon of hope in a world engulfed by war. As 1944 drew to a close, the resistance prepared for the final act in the struggle for Norway's freedom. The resistance had shown that they were capable of achieving the impossible, and the occupation was now within reach. The transformation of the resistance marked a pivotal moment in the fight against tyranny, a testament to the power of ordinary people to effect extraordinary change. The enduring legacy of the Norwegian lumberjacks, those daring operatives who had risked everything to sabotage the German war effort, would endure as a powerful testament to human ingenuity and courage under occupation. Their actions not only contributed to the eventual liberation of Norway but also served as a blueprint for resistance movements across Europe. The account of the lumberjack operatives would be remembered as a symbol of national resilience and unity, inspiring future generations to stand up against oppression. As we reflect on their legacy, we are reminded of the importance of standing up against tyranny, no matter the odds. The account of the Norwegian lumberjacks is a testament to the enduring spirit of resistance and the unyielding determination of those who refuse to be subjugated. Their actions, driven by a deep love for their country and a commitment to justice, remain a powerful symbol of hope and resilience. As the dust settled on the battlefields of Europe in 1945, Norway emerged from the long and harrowing years of Nazi occupation with a renewed sense of identity and purpose. The sacrifices made by the Norwegian resistance, particularly the audacious acts of the lumberjack operatives, became a cornerstone of the national narrative, celebrated as a symbol of resilience, ingenuity, and the unyielding spirit of the Norwegian people. Their legacy would not only shape the post-war landscape of Norway but also resonate across the globe, inspiring future generations to stand against oppression. In the immediate aftermath of the war, Norway faced the daunting task of rebuilding its society and infrastructure, which had been ravaged by years of occupation. Yet, amid this reconstruction, The stories of the resistance fighters emerged as powerful reminders of the strength of the human spirit. The Norwegian government recognized the importance of honoring those who had fought for freedom, and efforts were made to commemorate the contributions of the lumberjack operatives and their fellow resistance members. One of the first initiatives was the establishment of memorials and monuments dedicated to the resistance fighters. In towns and cities across Norway, plaques and statues were erected to honor the bravery and sacrifices of those who had risked their lives in the fight against tyranny. These memorials served not only as a tribute to the fallen but also as a source of inspiration for future generations. Schools incorporated the stories of the resistance into their curricula, ensuring that the enduring legacy of the lumberjack operatives would be passed down through the ages. The narrative of the Norwegian resistance was further immortalized through literature and film. Authors and filmmakers sought to capture the essence of the struggle, portraying the courage and ingenuity of the lumberjack operatives in their works. Documentaries were produced, showcasing first-hand accounts from surviving members of the resistance, allowing their voices to be heard and their stories to be shared. These artistic endeavors played a crucial role in shaping public perception of the resistance, highlighting the importance of collective action in the face of overwhelming odds. Internationally, the account of the Norwegian lumberjacks resonated with other nations that had experienced occupation during the war. The tactics employed by the resistance, particularly their ability to blend in with civilian life while conducting sabotage operations, became a model for other resistance movements across Europe. The success of the Norwegian operatives demonstrated that ordinary citizens could rise up against oppressive regimes, inspiring similar efforts in countries like France, Poland, and the Netherlands. The enduring legacy of the lumberjack strategy transcended borders, providing a blueprint for those seeking to reclaim their freedom. As the Cold War began to shape global politics in the late 1940s and 1950s, the lessons learned from the Norwegian resistance took on new significance. The ideological battle between democracy and totalitarianism underscored the importance of vigilance and resistance against oppression, regardless of its form. The account of the lumberjack operatives served as a reminder that Norway's fight for freedom is an ongoing struggle, one that requires the courage and commitment of individuals willing to stand up for their beliefs. In Norway, the enduring legacy of the resistance continued to influence national policy and identity. The experiences of the war fostered a sense of unity among the Norwegian people, leading to the establishment of a robust welfare state that prioritized social equity and justice. The sacrifices made during the occupation were woven into the fabric of the nation, shaping a collective memory that emphasized the importance of democracy, human rights, and the need to protect against tyranny in all its forms. The Norwegian government also took steps to ensure that the lessons of the resistance were not forgotten. Annual commemorative events were established, where citizens gathered to honor the memory of the resistance fighters. These events included speeches from veterans, educational workshops for young people, and cultural performances that celebrated the spirit of resistance. The emphasis on remembrance served to reinforce the values of courage, solidarity, and the importance of standing up for one's rights. The effect of the Norwegian resistance extended beyond national borders, influencing international discourse on human rights and the role of civil society in promoting democracy. The account of the lumberjack operatives became part of a broader narrative about the importance of grassroots movements in challenging authoritarian regimes. As countries around the world grappled with issues of oppression and injustice, the Norwegian experience served as a powerful example of how ordinary people could effect change through collective action. In the decades following the war, Norway also became a beacon of peace and diplomacy on the global stage. The country's commitment to human rights and international cooperation was informed by the lessons learned during the occupation. Norway emerged as a strong advocate for disarmament, conflict resolution, and humanitarian efforts, reflecting the values that had been forged in the crucible of war. The enduring legacy of the resistance was evident in Norway's foreign policy, as the nation sought to promote peace and justice in a world still grappling with the scars of conflict. As the years turned into decades, The account of the Norwegian Lumberjacks continued to inspire new generations. The resistance fighters became symbols of hope and resilience, their actions serving as a reminder that Norway's fight for freedom is never truly over. The values of courage, ingenuity, and collective action remain central to the Norwegian identity, shaping the nation's response to contemporary challenges. In the 21st century, the commemoration of the resistance has also taken on new forms in the digital age. Social media platforms and online forums have provided spaces for sharing stories, connecting with descendants of resistance fighters, and fostering discussions about the importance of resistance in contemporary society. The enduring legacy of the lumberjack operatives has found new life in these virtual spaces, where their story continues to inspire activism and engagement among young people. As we reflect on the enduring legacy of the Norwegian lumberjacks, we are reminded of the enduring power of collective action in the face of adversity. Their story is a testament to the human spirit's capacity for resilience and courage, illustrating how ordinary individuals can rise to meet extraordinary challenges. The enduring legacy of the resistance serves as a beacon of hope, reminding us that Norway's fight for freedom and justice is a shared responsibility, one that requires the commitment and courage of all who seek to create a better world. In conclusion, the enduring legacy of the Norwegian lumberjacks is one of ingenuity, courage, and the unwavering belief in the power of collective action. Their story, forged in the fires of resistance, continues to inspire and resonate, reminding us of the importance of standing up against tyranny and fighting for justice. As we honor their memory, we are called to reflect on our own responsibilities in the ongoing struggle for freedom and human rights, ensuring that the spirit of resistance endures for generations to come.